Jennifer.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
She's in the bathroom.
It's okay.
Okay. Well, let's go.
Shall we?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We are here to present the Bush Foundation, a case study in giving money away. Our ethical case analysis and presentation was put together by Melissa Berth, Kay Bidney, Andrew Mevery, and Monica Say. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Andrew.
The Archibald J. Bush Foundation, circa 1993, our case study took place in this time, but originally 3M executive Archibald G. Bush and his wife Edith Badler Bush established the Bush Foundation in 1953 as a registered, tax-exempt nonprofit organization. The couple wanted their fortune to promote charitable, scientific, literary, and educational efforts within the local community. The foundation continued to grow after inheriting much of the Bush estate in the 1970s. By 1992, the organization had an endowment of $460 million, of which $20 million was annually awarded in grants. 15 directors govern the board. Each director is elected for a 12-year term. The directors come from all professional sectors to represent various views within the community. This includes a city official, child psychologist, a banker, and a professor. The directors then elect the foundation's executive director. In 1993, the executive director had led the foundation for 20 years and had served as president to the National Council of Foundations. The board chairs and supports 4 committees to inform their decisions: the Grants Committee, the Investment Committee, the Nominating Committee, and the Audit Committee. To clarify our role in understanding the Bush Foundation's decision, we were able to find the foundation mission and values on the website. The mission says in part that we improve the quality of life in Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota by strengthening organizational, community, and individual leadership. Some of the values are that we believe in being a trusted partner and catalyst for change, and that we demonstrate integrity and transparency in fulfilling our mission. Per federal law, the foundation has to distribute annually to charitable activities not less than 5% of the value of its endowment. The Grants Committee then has significant discretion in recommending a grant. However, the board, after reviewing suggestions from the Grants Committee, votes whether or not to award a nonprofit organization with a grant. Gwendolyn Anderson is a newly elected board director, and she's also a healthcare expert. She questioned if the foundation's investment portfolio included Tobacco Corporation stock. She saw involvement with tobacco sales as contrary to the foundation's commitment to funding healthcare and research. She suggested that the board research a social investing strategy for its portfolio, along with complete divestment of Tobacco Corporation stock.
This is a pie graph of the distribution of grants in 1992 for the Bush Foundation. And take note that education and human services is a big part of the pie, education being 55% and human services being 18%. Experts have divided social investing into 3 approaches. The avoidance approach is when the organization screens out or eliminates from investments that are considered morally unacceptable to them. And the positive approach is when the organization seeks investments that are involved or supports what they considered morally acceptable. And the activist approach is when the organization acts as an agent of change and hopes that their action will encourage or discourage others to act in the same way.
At this point, we'd like to pause and ask folks, would when you take into consideration the avoidance, positive, and activist approach to social investing, we've written these down here, as I'm sure you remember and retain exactly everything Monica just said. So we're curious, how do the social investment approaches reflect the 5 exemplary leadership practices from Huss and Hausner? And I'm wondering if a good way to do this would be for folks to say, where do you see maybe Model the Way fitting in, all of the other ones? Where do you see those fitting?
Well, the activist says model behavior, so I'm thinking maybe that would be model the way.
Maybe even challenge the process.
For activists?
Yeah.
We're not saying that they all necessarily fit neatly into one or the other, but other thoughts on that?
Encourage the heart, positive.
And I think that might be enabling as well.
For positive?
Positive.
How about avoidance? Okay. Hard. Divest, and if it's helpful, I can read them out loud. For avoidance, divest and do not reinvest in companies that challenge the organization's mission and values through their products or services. What would that be an example of? For examples?
Oh, good.
I didn't think of that.
Challenge the process.
Do you need more light? Can everyone see that?
I'm just gonna put challenge. As we were going through, I think, as I mentioned earlier, that these could fit in many different ways, but I think we came up with challenge the process certainly, as well as model the way for avoidance, because if you divest and do not reinvest, it sets an example for others. Model. For positive, definitely enable others to act as well as encourage the heart. I also think that modeling the way fits within that one, or could fit into that. Not quite as clearly necessarily as the other ones, but it does. And then with activist, which is model behavior that encourages other foundations to follow the organization's lead by publicly pursuing avoidance and positive practices. We also had inspire a shared vision and encourage the heart for this one. Does anyone disagree with any of those, or do you feel like they could all perhaps fit? Excuse me. Back to.
So the foundation's investment strategy is to earn a return of at least 5% plus the rate of interest to maintain its existence. And the foundation does create a competitive environment among their investment managers to ensure that high results are achieved. And the next slide